Hello and good morning, everybody. My name is Adam. I'm Head of Marketing at the ISM, and I'd like to welcome you all to this webinar. I know you'll get plenty of practical advice from today's session, which you can start applying to your own roles straight away. This webinar, once delivered, will be made available on demand as soon as we finish, so you can watch it as many times as you like and at your own convenience. During the webinar, you'll be able to ask questions by typing them to the box above. We'll answer any questions you have at the end. Please also take a moment of your time to look through the attachments, which we have provided as well. So to introduce our presenter, Peter has, starting in 1972, has built 3 successful companies, selling the last to a public company after only 5 years trading, enabling him to retire at the age of 42. Since then, Peter has concentrated on sharing his proven methods for business and personal success via audio and video programs, books, seminars, and conference speeches. In November 2017, the ISM awarded Peter with its Lifetime Achievement Award. The logo is below, for the positive difference he has made the sales profession in the UK and worldwide. Peter will be the next voice you'll hear. I hope you all enjoy the webinar, and I'll catch you guys at the end. Thank you.
Thanks, Adam. That was great. Hello there, everybody, and welcome to Let's Talk About Motivation and how we can make a difference and get more positivity in the sales team and in our own lives as well. I'm delighted to be with you this morning and have this opportunity to share with you some tried and tested and some proven ideas for how we do exactly that. But before we get started, there's one thing I've got to say, and it's this. I definitely don't have all the answers. I've been in business now for 46 years. In fact, just a few days ago, I celebrated my 46 years in business, which is a heck of a long time. And there's one thing I've learned over those 46 years, and it's this. I don't have all the answers. And in fact, every time I learn something new, I realize there's even more to learn. And I am a lifelong learner, and I'm sure you are too, otherwise you wouldn't be on a webinar like this. So with all of those things said, just give you a briefest history about what I do, but then we'll get into the main meat of the day. As I say, I've been in business for 46 years, been in a variety of businesses, from being a private investigator, selling car phones in the early days of car phones. I had a leasing company which I built up and sold for a few million and was able to retire early, and then didn't really retire, just kept writing and recording and standing and speaking across the world, sharing my ideas and learning more from other people. I've interviewed 160 people for one of my audio programs, an audio newsletter I used to run, which of course is now online these days. Everything's online. And I've learned so much from other people. I'm so proud to have done that because they've taught me so many lessons and saved me so much time, effort, money and energy by applying what they taught me. So I really am a lifelong learner. So what I'd like to do today is to share some of the ideas that I've picked up. They're ideas that I've used in my own business, that I've taught my own people in my teams. I've run sales teams and obviously run the whole business as well. And I've got some really cracking ideas to share with you that I know you'll be able to take away and apply straight away. So there's not going to be any BS from Lectureland. There's going to be some good practical stuff. So let's get started and talk about motivation. For me, motivation is very different from inspiration. And I do get people say they're going to motivate somebody else, or they're going to motivate the sales team, or they're going to motivate the people, or motivate the customers or clients into buying. And I don't think motivation works that way. I think motivation is an inside job with outside consequences. I'm in the process of learning a little bit of Spanish for part of the year I live in Spain. And whilst my Spanish is not very good, what it has reminded me in the learning of another language is more about verbs. And I came across an expression which I hadn't heard until back at school days, which was about reflexive verbs, i.e. stuff you do to yourself. And it seems to me that motivation should really be a reflexive verb. It's a thing you can only do to yourself. You can only motivate yourself. Whereas you can inspire other people by what you say, what you do. I don't think you can inspire them necessarily with money. You're probably what the money does for them. But I think there's a great deal of difference between inspiration and motivation. As leaders, we can create a motivational atmosphere in which people's self-motivation is triggered. And the creation of that motivational atmosphere is, in reality, inspiration. So I'm often, when I watch things on TV, YouTube, webinars, seminars, live presenters, I am inspired by what I see, by the stories of people achieving things in all sorts of different walks of life. And that in turn triggers my internal motivation. Now, with motivation, let me just move the slide. This is the first time I've presented on this particular format like this. I normally use a different platform. So let's talk about motivation. Let's talk about a way towards motivation and the difference of them. I'm a great believer as a salesperson, and I'm proud to call myself a salesperson, but I focus more on away motivated selling than I do on towards motivated selling. And the reason is, and I've got a couple of expressions and we'll come back to them in a minute or two, that I've worked out over this 46 years that I've been selling, that people are more easily moved on a discussion about what they're missing out on rather than what they'll potentially gain. And I like to think of a way towards like this. Imagine that you and I are together, we're in a long room, and on the one end of the room is a big block of ice. And we're stood by that block of ice together, and it's really cold on our rear ends. Well, we're motivated to move away. That's simply away motivation. We're motivated to move away from poverty, from pain, from unfitness, from anything that is a painful situation or that we perceive as painful. The challenge with away motivation is this. It's short-term only, because as we move away from that block of ice and we start to move down this long room, the effect of the ice and coldness on us diminishes. So the further we move away, the less effect it has. So we get to the middle of the room, now we sort of laugh in the face of ice because we don't care anymore, because the ice doesn't make any difference to us. And there we are in the middle, what some people call the comfort zone, or why they would think it was comfortable to be in the middle, always working their lives based on away motivation, which so many people do. They don't want to be too fit, but they don't want to be too fat. They don't want to be too rich, but they don't want to be too poor. They don't want to be too popular, but they certainly don't want to be less than popular. And a lot of their lives are based on away motivated strategies only, which trap them, and there's the appropriate verb, trap them in the middle, rather than giving them inspiration to do something else. So at the other end of the corridor, this long, thin room, is a nice warm fire, and a good friend of ours who's really good at telling jokes. And he's got a bottle of wine there, something we particularly like to drink, or water if you prefer, or coffee as the case may be. And he's calling us over and he's saying, come along here, Peter and your friend, come along over here because I'm going to tell you this joke, give you a glass of wine. And it's a nice warm fire as well. That's called towards motivation. And this is the great thing about towards motivation, is the closer we get to it, the more we want to be there. So here we've got the two sides of motivation that work not only for ourselves, not only for our people, but also work in the sales profession, in business. Because if we're going to be talking about away motivation with, for example, clients, I think it works this way. And we'll talk about the difference between clients and customers and how that works on motivation as well. Is if we're talking to an audience that doesn't really know us very well, and by that I mean we're going out to market, and we're asking people to connect with us, say, a LinkedIn strategy, a Facebook strategy, an email strategy, and we're asking them, give you just an example of this, to download, say, a free report or a video, something like that. I've found, and I've tested for the last 20 years, that an away motivated title will outpull a towards motivated title with an audience that does not yet know us. So if I was going out, let's say I've rented a list, let's say I'm going out to Facebook, not to my own people who are connected, but Facebook generally, let's say I'm going out to LinkedIn with some pay-per-click advertising, I'm going out to Google, whatever it might be, or Bing, I'm going to use an away motivated title. Let me give you an example. The classic free report that you see out there in the market these days is the 7 secrets to, and whatever is the definition of success. The 7 secrets of whatever. Whereas I've found out that the away motivated title pulls better. Let me give you an example. The 7 big mistakes that business owners make, or business people make, whichever one we want to use subject to the market. Costing them a fortune in lost turnover, lost sales, and what's even worse, lost personal cash, and how to avoid them. Now that is one heck of a long title, but I have tested that particular title in the marketplace for years and years and years, and it works brilliantly. Let me say it again for you. The 7 big mistakes that business people make, costing them a fortune in lost turnover, lost profits, and what's even worse, lost personal cash, and how to avoid them. To give you an idea, you probably know the name Brian Tracy. Very well-known presenter. I know Brian very well. I would say he's a friend of mine, and we've done quite a few things together. And one of the things Brian did for me was he allowed me to send my email marketing piece to his list some years ago, about that free report, The 7 Big Mistakes. 1,851 people downloaded that report from Brian's list. It's the best pulling title I've ever used. And it works because of motivation, because it's away motivated, and people are far more likely to respond to an away motivated message than they are toward a towards motivated message, unless they know you really well and their level of trust, liking, connection, and probably having spent with you is very, very high. If they're at that end of the continuum, then you can use a more towards motivated title. So, for example, the 7 secrets that enable you to increase your turnover, increase your profits, and what's even better, increase the amount of personal cash and how to do it right now. And that would be a towards motivated title as opposed to the away motivated title. Let me give you another example. The 7 big time management problems and how to avoid them so you can squeeze more out of every single day. And there I'm using both away motivation and towards motivation, because we've got the away motivation of the indication of the problem and towards motivation in the sense that there's a potential solution. So here we have away motivation and here we have towards motivation. Let me move the slides on one. I'll give you my thoughts on here. Away motivation is the catalyst for action. It's the thing that gets us going. And the reason is because it's painful. There's a lovely story told by presenters about a dog that is lying on a wooden porch out in the Wild West. And there's the old cowboy there sitting in his rocking chair, rocking away. And the dog is lying on the porch. And a friend of the cowboy's comes along and he's chatting to the cowboy. And the dog is lying on the porch moaning and going, oh, I'm making weird. And he's really groaning there. And he says, what's wrong with the dog? And he said, oh, he's lying on a nail. He said, he's lying on a nail. Why doesn't he move? He said, it doesn't hurt enough yet. And there's the problem. We've got to build up that pain so it hurts enough for people to take action. Because away motivation is the catalyst for action. But unfortunately, it's not the continuation of action. Let me give you an idea on this. You know as well as I do the month when most people will join the gym in order to get fitter, slimmer, or whatever it might be that their reason for doing it. And let me tell you now, their reason for doing it is not towards motivated, it's away motivated. We'll talk about that in a second. So they've run up the stairs one day, got out of breath and gone, I've got to get myself down the gym. Or they've looked in the mirror one day, around just after Christmas time when they've added a few pounds and they've gone, oh gosh, I'm going to have to get myself down the gym. So they joined the gym in January. That's the time that the highest number of people join the gym. The other one is just before the summer when people need their bikini bodies or their swimming shorts bodies in order to go lie on a beach somewhere. So they are motivated by away motivated strategies in order to go to the gym. So they join based on away motivation. But of course, within a month of going, if they last a month, and most people don't last more than a few months, they've started to lose a few pounds. They started to get fitter a little bit. They started to put on a little bit more muscle. And suddenly, all of that away motivation, which had driven the action in the first place, has stopped working. And because they hadn't set themselves some seriously written, committed goals, then they leave the gym. So they no longer have a reason to take the action, because away motivation is the catalyst to action. Let me pass the next slide up for you. Here we go. Towards motivation is the continuation of action. So what we've got to make sure is if we want to be self-motivated, if we want to inspire our team members to take action, remember motivation is an inside job with outside consequences, then what we need to point out is the consequences of away motivation and the consequences of towards motivation, because it's those consequences that make it happen. I'll also, in a moment or two, explain about long-term change, because long-term change is not happening at this motivational level. The short-term change is happening at this level. If we want our team members to suddenly get into action, then yes, by all means use away motivation. If you've got a salesperson who isn't performing and you're able to say to that salesperson, if you do not do this, this is what happens, i.e. you're going to leave and you're going to take your lack of sales somewhere else. But yes, that's away motivated and may well inspire someone, move them to do something. because that's the way that particular works. But it's only going to be short term. So away motivation is the catalyst for action. Let me go to the previous slide for you here. Anybody who just came in later there. Away motivation is the catalyst for action, and towards motivation is the continuation of action. So we can use this also in the sales operation. So if we're talking to a client, when we're going through the gathering stage, which as you and I know is the major part of the sales process, not the presenting stage. The presenting stage is a different process altogether. The actual selling takes place in the gathering stage of the sales process. We've got a really good opening that focuses the mind of that potential client, customer or patient. We then move into the gathering stage, and the customer, client or patient sells themselves based on their answers to our well-crafted questions. As Tony Alexander, a famous presenter in America, famous for teaching about charisma, said, prescription before diagnosis is malpractice. Prescription before diagnosis is malpractice. And what he basically meant by that was that if we start to present, if we start to get into the idea of demonstrating or presenting our potential solution to the client's problem or the potential opportunity that we have that can capitalize on a good thing for them, before we gathered any information, we're just firing in the dark. That is very, very poor salesmanship. So real salesmanship takes place at the gathering stage when we're asking those questions that we've thought about to understand whether those questions will create a way or towards motivated feelings in the person answering. And for me, more away motivation than towards motivation is far better as far as I'm concerned. Then we have a much better chance of understanding precisely what the customer, client or patient wants. And I'm going to talk about in a moment about the difference of the motivational impact of whether it's a client or a customer. Then we can then move smoothly into the shorter stage, which is the presentation and the demonstration, which simply confirms that what the customer or client thinks they want is actually what they do want. But the real selling takes place, the motivational impacts, and that's what we're talking about now, of selling takes place in the gathering stage, and a lot of it needs to be away motivated, not just towards motivated. So let's add to that now and talk about this. This is my favorite expression. I'm just going to have a swig of my coffee here. That's better. This is my favorite expression that I wish I'd written this, that I've heard over the last 10 years, and I'll tell you where I got it from. I got it from a book from two authors who I highly rate. And it's two brothers in America, and their names are Chip, as in chips and fish, or fish and chips, Chip, and Dan, D-A-N, Heath, H-E-A-T-H, Chip and Dan Heath. And to date, they've got 4 phenomenal books out. And this book comes in their book, this expression comes in their book called Switch, How to Change When Change is Hard. Really good book. All their books are first rate. And I think that this is really powerful for you and me individually, when we're looking at our own lives and what it is that we're wanting to achieve. And also when we're dealing with our sales teams and hoping to inspire them, remembering we can't motivate other people, to inspire them to be the best that they can be. And I found that often for myself, that I stop doing things or don't start doing things because of a lack of clarity. And that lack of clarity stops my motivation kicking in. So wherever there is a lack of clarity, we find resistance. So for example, if we send out an email campaign and the subject line doesn't clearly indicate either a benefit or a problem that can be solved in the subject line, or doesn't intrigue the potential reader in some way, they're unlikely to open it and read the actual message that we're sending. As you and I know, the subject line of an email is its most important part. The headline on a web page is its most important part. The headline of a piece of direct mail is so important, far more important than the body copy, because unless somebody gets past the subject line or past the headline, the motivational impact of that, then they're not going to read the rest of it anyway. And as Gordon Herschel Lewis said in his book, Sales Letters That Sizzle, fire your big guns first. And firing that big gun first is in the headline or in the subject line. And it has to have this emotional and motivational impact. Is it away motivated or is it towards motivated? Let me give you a subject line that uses the power of away motivation that you'll be able to use immediately. And like most things, I took this out of my swipe file. In other words, past headlines that have been proven to work well, but we don't steal them. We use them as inspiration or self-motivation in order to write better ones. So a famous headline that used the power of motivation brilliantly throughout history was this. Its original one was, I'll tell you the original first. It said, do you make mistakes in English? And it bombed. It was useless. Do you make mistakes in English is a terrible subject line or a headline. They added one word and it improved the motivational impact. Here we are. Do you make these mistakes in English? Now, as soon as we add the word these mistakes in, not only do we bring the problem up close and personal, because these is better than those, because those mistakes are positioned somewhere else and they're away from us, so we don't have as much pain attached to them. But do you make these mistakes in English have a massive amount of curiosity, which is one of the main drivers for people's activity. This is the reason that people take action, because they're curious about things. And they're also curious about things that are scarce. And the information there is implied to be scarce. So do you make these mistakes in English? I used that and used, do you make these 7 business mistakes? That's one of my best pulling opening lines ever. Opening line in the sense of marketing, but in the business sense. So using the power of motivation. So if there's a lack of clarity in the subject line, the lack of clarity in the email, the lack of clarity in the message out to our salespeople, is a lack of clarity on what we want them to do and what's acceptable behaviour, we will always get resistance. Why? Because resistance is created through a lack of clarity. This links in beautifully in lack of clarity when we start to talk about the type of customers or clients that we're dealing with. I once interviewed a man in the States. I'd urge you to go and look him up. He's got some phenomenal free resources as well as paid resources. His name is Roy H. Williams. Now, out of the 160 people I've interviewed, and not all weren't in America, loads of people in the UK that I've interviewed, so John Harvey Jones, Paul Daniels, to name a couple who died, and a load of other people who are still alive, by the way, and taught me some magic lessons. Forgive the pun there. But Roy H. Williams, who's known as the Wizard of Ads, I learnt more in 40 minutes on a phone call with him than I've learnt in any other 40 minutes in my life. Let me share with you what he taught me. And this got me to understand more about motivation and more about clients and selling. He said this. He said, Peter. No, he didn't say that. He said, Peter, because that's the way he speaks. And he said, Peter, there's a major difference between relational clients and transactional customers. Here's the difference. The transactional customer is their own expert and buys everything as a commodity based on price. So, for example, let's say there's a guy and he's going to buy himself a new car. He becomes the expert in the car. He knows all the facts and figures about the car. He sets up 3 dealers. He bids one against the other. He beats them all up on price and he ends up finding the cheapest one. And the only way to upset him is to tell him he could have bought it for 100 quid cheaper down the road somewhere else. And then he'd be really upset about it. Why? Because it's a transaction. It's purely a transaction. He's his own expert. What about the relational client? The relational client looks to us to be... Excuse me, my phone was ringing in the background even I've got it turned on silent, so I won't disturb us in that way, but it bleeped in my ear. So the relational client is like this. They expect us to be the expert. And price becomes a factor and not the factor. Here's where the resistance comes in. If we start dealing with clients as though they're customers, we spoil the motivational impact and inspirational impact of our messages. So let me just say it again. The transactional customer, I'm using that word specifically, is their own expert and buys on price. The relational client looks to us to be the expert, and price becomes a factor, not the factor. Now just think of the language patterns that would change and be different based on who we're aiming for in our particular marketplace. If we're looking to deal with clients only, where we're looking for long-term relationships, knowing that the motivational impact of price is less than it would be with a transactional person, then we wouldn't dream of using words like discount, because discount is a transactional word. It is not a relational word. If you go down to the local doctor because you've got a problem with your toe, the doctor doesn't say to you, look, I tell you what, if I cut both off, if I cut 2 of them off, you can have it 10% cheaper. It just doesn't happen. because it's a relationship. It's expert status. So if we're looking for clients, if we're looking to inspire or motivate or create a motivational atmosphere, motivational words that get people to respond to our marketing or help our sales team get more leads, we need to have absolute clarity, here's our key word, on whether or not we're trying to get clients or customers. And if we're trying to get clients, then our sales team need to look like experts. They need to look like experts, walk like experts, talk like experts. The whole thing must be an expert status, positioning and posture. That's where that clarity comes in. So one of the takeaways I would suggest for you from today is to be absolutely certain whether or not in your marketplace you're looking for, you could be looking for both, but whether or not you're looking for relationships or you're looking for transactions. Now, in my business, and you know the sort of things I do, because Adam mentioned at the start there, with the things that I do, where I help people become more successful, I help them build either a career or a business, a life of choice. So they have freedom from those things that have held them back and freedom to be whoever they want to be. And therefore, they're happy about it. That's basically what I do, both with sales and marketing and personal development stuff in a variety of different ways. So I'm very clear that I have no interest in transactional customers. I am only interested in relational clients because that suits me, my personality, it suits my business model, it suits the future that I'm planning. And I would urge you to have absolute clarity on that. Now, let's move on from there and add another layer to this on this basis. People will never consistently do who they aren't. I'll have another swig of my coffee while you're thinking about that one. So, people will never consistently do who they are. What does this mean? It means clearly this. What people do, they do based on, most people will tell you this, based on their beliefs and values. It's a bit deeper than that. That's only part of the story. It's actually based on their identity. So, if we ask our people in our teams to do things that are in alignment with their identity and their beliefs and values, the chances are they will do it long term. If we ask them to do something that is out of alignment, out of kilter, it just doesn't feel right for them, and notice the choice of that verb doesn't feel right for them, then it's unlikely they will do it long term. This is why most training doesn't work long term. There's a number of reasons why it doesn't work, but the real reason is that people are being asked to do things that are out of alignment with their beliefs, value and identity. And all we get then is a short-term impact, but we don't get long-term impact. Why? Because the flip of this expression is equally true. People will consistently do who they are. So we've got to think of it in both ways. People will never consistently do who they aren't, because what they do has to be in alignment with who they are, but they will consistently do who they are. So if we're wanting our teams, our people, to perform at the highest level or do the things we want them to do for them and for us and the business and its purpose, then we have to align the activity with the person. We have to align the activity with the person. Why? Because then they'll do it all day long. You've seen it yourself. You've been into a Starbucks, one Starbucks, we'll call it Starbucks A, and you got served your coffee and whatever else you had with it, and it was a fabulous experience. You had to like the coffee anyway. The people dealt with you well. They were smiling, whatever. They were doing who they are. You went into another Starbucks where the people were doing the job, but they hated it, and they weren't doing who they are, and therefore it was a terrible experience. It was bad for them, it was bad for you, it was bad for Starbucks, etc. If we can align what it is that we want people to do with who they are, then fantastic. That's why I like things like DISC profile. That's why I like Kolbe, K-O-L-B-E. That's why that Kolbe profile, mine is 5393 if you happen to know your Kolbe profile. You know, I urge you to look at these things, DISC profiling, Kolbe profiling, all of those things, so we can be clearer about the motivational impact, self-motivation on people based on who they are, so we can align what we're asking them to do clearly with who they are. So, I'm sure that makes sense. So let me just add another slide to this. And I'm whizzing through my slides. Might finish early today, you never know. And here we go. Long-term change happens at the identity level. And this is why. If we try and get people to do things based on consequences, now this doesn't matter whether it's our sales team, our colleagues, ourselves, our children, other people's children, you know, nieces and nephews, you cannot do it long-term with consequence. Consequence is a short-term impact. So if you give somebody a negative consequence, in other words, an away-motivated consequence, so if you don't do this, this bad thing happens, then if they do it, the bad thing happens, that's the end of the deal. There is no impact for them now not to do it a second time. We've got to trigger the consequence again. We've got to say, aha, okay, so we've given you the bad thing now, the bad result because you did it. Now, and you're going to get the bad result again if you do it again. Or if it's a towards motivated one and we say, do this and this good thing happens, and they do it and the good thing happens, that's the end of it. So there's no long-term impact. In order to get the behavior again, you've got to do it again because long-term change happens at the identity level. And why is that true? Because people will never consistently do who they aren't. So how do we get this change at the identity level? Let me move on to this next slide and I'll show you. I wrote this about 25 years ago, and then I saw a different version of quite a well-known guy in the training NLP sort of area called Robert Dilts, who did the thing called the Dilts Pyramid, which I've got to show you today as well. So this is what I wrote. I was thinking one day about why is it that some people succeed to this amazing level by whatever definition of success we want to talk about, and other people really struggle to succeed at the level of success that their level of skill says they should. And I've been thinking about it for a long time, and so one day I sat down and wrote this, and I said, I believe this is how it works. The words that we say inside our mind, our in-talk, the words that we say outside our mind, our out-talk, and the words that we take in, that we believe from other people, encode our belief patterns. So give you an example. You'll know a person who says that they're no good at mental arithmetic. And you know that what happens for them is they're no good at mental arithmetic. You know people who say that they always turn up late for meetings. And I did that because I happened to notice that the viewing numbers went up by one because it seemed appropriate. I was having fun there. So, you know people who say they always turn up late for meetings. And what usually happens? They turn up late for meetings. What people say happens to be the results that they get. So the words that people say inside their mind, outside their mind, and believe of others encodes their belief patterns. Here's the start of it, right? Those belief patterns then drive our attitude. And our attitude is the way we look in at ourselves and the way we look out at the world. In other words, our in-look and our outlook. And that attitude gives us, I'll use the American pronunciation, the leverage of it, or leverage if we prefer, the leverage of it, and leverage comes in two suits. It comes away motivated and it comes towards motivated, which we already talked about. And because of that leverage or leverage, we get to take some action. You see, I was struggling to make the acronym work here. So then, because we take some action, we have some results. And it's all down to you. And as you can see down the left-hand side, it says wealthy. This is how it works. We need to be really careful what we say because it will drive the results. You probably know the Napoleon Hill book, Think and Grow Rich. Napoleon Hill was a journalist, and he was paid by Andrew Carnegie, who ran Bethlehem Steel, to go round and interview successful men at that point. It doesn't mean the word successful women, just he interviewed successful men. And he took all their ideas about being successful and came up with this expression, which was a take on Marcus Aurelius, a Roman emperor, as you probably know, I'm sure you know, which is basically what the mind of man can conceive and believe it can achieve. What the mind of man can conceive and believe it can achieve. Earl Nightingale, one of the famous audio presenters worldwide and the basis of most personal development material in the world today, said, you become what you think about all day long. You become what you think about all day long. And that Earl Nightingale called that the secret of success. That was the secret, a little known secret. You'd think everybody knows it, but they don't. You become what you think about all day long. And what you think about, you tend to think about in words. So those words encode your belief, which give you your attitude, which means you get leverage, you take action, have results. It's all down to us individually. So you have to be really careful with the words. And when I explain this to people sometimes, just a few people go, are you sure? I go, yeah, let me see if I can prove it to you in one way, or at least demonstrate it. If I said to somebody, would you get up in the morning and then take a few moments on the side of the bed You may be done your meditation or whatever it is, but before you start the day, you sit on the side of the bed and you convince yourself by saying out loud that you're going to catch an incurable disease. Would you be prepared to do that? And people say, no, I wouldn't. And then I've said to them, well, why wouldn't you? And they say, well, because it might work. I say, okay, I understand that. Okay, how about this for a deal then? How about if you, when you got up in the morning, you sat on the side of the bed and you programmed yourself for 30 seconds to have the most amazing day? And they go, oh, no, that's just silly. That's just hype. Well, hang on a sec. If the negative one would work, or possibly work, why wouldn't the positive one? Because throughout the ages, people have always said, what you say will be the way. That's my version of it, by the way. What you say will be the way. Why? Because what you say, you start to believe about yourself. You see it everywhere. You hear the complete crap that people say about themselves, and they're surprised that they get the outcomes that happen, because they're encoding their belief patterns. Now, let me show you the Dilts pyramid, because when I saw the Dilts pyramid, which I've got on slide for you here, right? This is the basic one. I didn't bother putting the pyramid shape on it, but you can see it there. When I saw this, I thought, hang on a minute, this is the same as my wealthy process. This is exactly the same. Identity, beliefs and values, skills and capabilities, behavior and environment. And the great thing about this is this gives us a way to deal with our sales teams and help them become more successful. It gives us a way to deal with ourselves and helps us become more successful. So simple. Here's how you work it. You work it upside down. That's what you do with it. So by environment, we can also think about not just environment, but the results that we're getting or the results that somebody else is getting. Right? Nice and simple. So let's take a sales example. We've got some sales targets, and I've got some fairly challenging ideas about sales targets in a minute for you. But let's say there's a sales target. That's the result that we're looking for. But the measurements that we're taking, and I'll show you a little model for that in a second, I've got it on a slide for you, is showing us that we're not getting the results that we want. So in other words, the environment that we're experiencing is not what we want. How do we solve that? We solve it by going up a level. So if the environment or results aren't right, we go up a level to behavior and say, hang on a minute then, let's have a look at the behavior that we're undertaking or somebody else is undertaking, because that behavior is what's creating the environment that we're enjoying or not enjoying at the moment. But what about if the behavior looks right? Let's say you're coaching a member of your sales team and his or her results aren't right. So you sit down, you have a coaching session with them, you point out the actual results that they're having, you compare those against what we're looking for, and here's a little thought for you. I tend to compare where I've come from, not where I'm going to. Because I found in life, if I compare where I've come from, I've usually made progress. I've usually got a result. It's usually positive. If I'm compare where I'm going to, then that's usually perfection, utopia, wherever it might be. And I'm always short of that particular one until I may actually get there one day on the road. But you say that I'm saying, great part of coaching will be to measure where we've come from, not just against where we're going to, because at least you've got a very positive impact for that. Then if you want to use the power of away motivation, you can, but of course, remember, that's only going to be a short-term impact. So we're looking at the environment, we're looking at the results, and we're then saying, okay, so if this isn't what it wants to be, we need to look at behaviours. So we look at behaviours, and the behaviours seem to be right. Not everything they might be about right, but still not getting what we want as the environmental result. So we go up a level again, or we then look at the skills and capabilities. Hang on a minute. And this is what very often triggers people to do a load of training. And they say, okay, so we need some more skills. This person isn't skillful enough. This salesperson doesn't know how to open, certainly speeds through the gathering stage, trying to get into the presenting and demonstrating stage when really the sales take place at the gathering point. So certain about that from all the things I've ever done in my life. Selling takes place at the gathering stage as customers, clients, patients sell themselves in answer to our well-crafted questions. And then the presentation or the demonstration simply confirms that what they thought was right. Anyway, longer conversation for perhaps another day. So we can look at skills and capabilities, and maybe we'll say, hang on a minute, they're going to need some more training here. They're not skillful enough in that, they're not capable enough in this. And I'll give you another model for that to go in a moment or two. But let's say it's still not working. We've then got to do what most people do, is we start to look at their beliefs and values and say, aha, we've solved it. Beliefs and values is where the big problem is. Their beliefs and values are out of sync with what we're asking them to do. Yes, true. And you can certainly question that and try and align the beliefs and values with the activity. However, you won't get long-term change. Long-term change happens at the identity level. So all we've got to keep on doing is we've got to keep going up this pyramid, or go back to my one, which I'll show you again here, go back to the wealthy one. We've got to keep going back up to say, till we reach the identity. And identity is triggered and confirmed and reconfirmed day after day after day by the words we say. Let me show you the words. I'll bring this one back for you. So here we go. Just put it in a linear form instead of a pyramid shape there. So the words we use at the identity level is I am, or are I am. So when you're dealing with yourself, thinking and listening to your own voice, and I'll give you a technique for that. Let me just make a note. I'm going to do that for you. 2 seconds. Just put that down there. Okay. I'll give you a little technique in a second or two. When you're listening to yourself, and when you're listening to people in your team, listen really carefully for the words they say after the 2 words, I am. Because what they're talking about there, they're talking at their identity level. So if somebody says, I'm, which is the contraction, obviously, I am always late. I don't like saying that in the first person, by the way, but I will say it again. I am always late. In other words, I am always late. That's what they say. Guess what happens? They get an environment that matches that identity. In other words, they get environment, for the word environment, read results. They get results that match with that. So I am is identity level language. I believe is the beliefs and values level. I can is skills and capabilities. I do behavior, and I have environment. So you can see how this works beautifully. So if you want to solve what somebody has, I'm down at the bottom level environment, we have a look to see what they do. If that doesn't work, we look at what they can do, which is the next one level. If that's struggling, we look at believe, and that's where most people stop. They stop and think they've solved it at beliefs and values. No, they haven't. Because it's that identity where we need to be doing it. So listen to your own language in order to listen out for what you actually say after the words when you say I am. And make sure you catch yourself and say the right words. Make sure you can point this out gently in a coaching manner for members of your team. Let me give you a technique for catching that language pattern. This is called dynamic listening. It's all part of motivation, this stuff. Dynamic listening is where most people would say to you that listening and talking are the opposite ends of the scale. Talking is when you're doing it. Listening is when you're doing it for somebody else. You're listening to somebody else talking. So I've got my hands out wide across the room here at the moment. So listening is one side, talking is the other. I'd like to bring those two together and say this. The person you should listen to more than anybody else is yourself. Because you want to listen out for your language patterns. So how do you do that? Right. Well, you make a little contract with yourself. If we were face to face and I could actually show you a little hand. Imagine that you've been down to the seashore once as a kid and you picked up a large shell, you put it to your ear and you could hear the sea. Well, if you did that with a cupped hand, so you put it behind your ear and you moved your hand around as you were speaking, you would hear the point when the echo of your voice reverberates, and that reminds you to listen to that. And then all you need to do, and it'll give you a couple of major benefits. Excuse me a second, just a brief cough here. Sorry. What's happened here is you'll start listening to the words you say rather than simply hearing the noise of your speech. Let me say that again. You'll start to really actively hear the words you say rather than simply listening to the noise of your speech. And once you do that, a number of remarkable things happen. Firstly, you are able to catch the language patterns that you're using and being aware that you're using stuff at the identity level, the belief level, the skills and capabilities, behavior or environment level. You'll be very aware more than ever before of where the language is taking you and programming you. Remembering, if I go back 2 slides, that the words you say encode your beliefs. So you've got to be very careful with those words. Remember I said in talk, out talk. So it's what you say when you talk about you to somebody else. It's what you say about yourself when you're talking to yourself as well. So that's the first thing that happens. Let me go back one there. Sorry, maybe one more there. Good, okay. So that's the first thing that happens. The second thing that happens, and this is just amazing for salespeople, teach this to your sales team, is you remove all the filler words. So no more will you be saying, like, sort of, absolutely. I think my key one is absolutely. I think I can catch that all of the time. Because what you start to do is exactly what you do when you're writing. If you wrote me an email at the end of this saying, Peter, I really enjoyed that, you would not put all the words together so all the letters were touching each other. You would put gaps in between all the words, and those gaps would be spaces. So when we're speaking, what we do, instead of using filler words, which rob our speech of power and passion and persuasion, we put gaps in instead. And as long as you don't put the gap in the wrong place, or you leave it too long, nobody's going to notice. So that is really powerful as a double whammy technique to not only listen to hear what you're saying, I am, I believe, I can, I do, I have, but also to make sure that you can be the most fluent that you can possibly be. So there's a cracking idea to share with your people. So here's a process for you, which I think will enable you to take all these ideas and start to put them into play. And then when I'm finished this bit, I'm going to share with you a little process called the Yesterday's Road Method, which will really be incredibly powerful for you, that you can teach to your sales team and get them really focused on the precise actions they need to take to achieve any goal in life, let alone the goals to do with the selling. Okay. So you can see it here. I've done it on one slide rather than as a build for you. Goal, plan, action, feedback with a feedback loop. We've got the left bit at the top, which links to purpose. There's goals that are on purpose, forgive the pun. Goals that are on purpose are really powerful. I see there's a question there, so let me just have a quick click on questions. Peter, it's Adam, what's the time? Oh, yeah, okay, sorry, Adam, okay, take that away. Okay, I've got that. I'm well aware of that, Adam, thank you very much indeed. So we've got goal, plan, action, and feedback. So, very, very simple. Firstly, we need to have our purpose. And purpose is not something we invent, it's something we discover about ourselves over life. Leave that there for another longer discussion on a different day. So clearly set goals, because away motivation will be the catalyst for action, but towards motivation will be the continuation of action. So what's towards motivated? It's got the goal that we're moving from today towards that. Once we've got a goal, we then set a plan, and you can see what it says there about plan. A goal without a plan is just a wish. So we've absolutely got to have a plan to achieve the goal. It can be 15 pages because we'll probably never read it again. So it's got to be nice and simple, perhaps a one-pager. And from the plan, we get the actions. And I'm going to give you a little technique to know exactly what actions you need to take. And you can teach this to your sales team as well. Make sure you tell them it was me that told you. And then from the action, all we get is feedback. And we get internal feedback and external feedback. The internal feedback is how we feel about it. You know, we've done some good business. How we feel, we might not feel good about it. Or we've done something that didn't quite work out the way we wanted it to work out, but we actually feel very good about it because we've learned a way not to do something. And then the external feedback is the actual results, the applause, the money, the numbers, and all of those types of things. And of course, the feedback tells us whether or not we're on track for our goal. And if we're on track for the goal, great. We keep looking at the plan. Yes, it's right. Keep taking the action, getting the feedback. If we're not on track for the goal, that's what the feedback tells us. Then we can say, do we still want that goal? And if the answer is yes to that, is it still on purpose? Yes, it is. In that case, is the plan still right? And if the plan is still right, then the actions must be wrong. So we need to change the actions. I mean, there's only three things to look at. Is the goal what I want? Yes, no. Is the plan going to achieve that goal for me? Yes, no. Am I taking the right actions? Yes and no. Ever so simple, isn't it? Now, let me share with you a really powerful way to know the actions, and you can teach this to anybody you want to teach it to, because this will get them to know precisely what they need to do. Let me tell you a story earlier. I had a business in the Midlands, which was a leasing company, and after 5 years, I sold it to a public company in London, a main board public company. I sold it for a few million quid on a 1-year earn-out deal. So they wanted a 3-year earn-out deal. I said, no, I'm happy to do a 1-year earn-out. So I got a big chunk of money at the front, and I would get another big chunk of money at 1 year's time, providing we hit the numbers that we targeted. Now, halfway through the earn-out year, we lost a major client. Not because we did anything wrong. They moved out of our marketplace. I was in the leasing game, and they didn't want to be in leasing anymore. Nothing I'd done, particularly all my business. So I gathered the directors together, and I said this. Let's imagine it's the 31st of March next year. This was the September, by the way, and our year end was 31st of March. So let's imagine 31st of March next year, and we have not hit the figures, and we are not going to get the second tranche of the money. right? Now, we need to feel it. This is a very emotional thing to do, and you have to do this on your own. So you've got to be really annoyed. You've got to be angry. You can be swearing and banging the desk. You've got to get into the state that you would be in if that situation occurred. And when you're in that state, you'll ask yourself this question: if only I'd. And you say to yourself, if only I'd, ... ellipsis, I would have achieved that goal. And you write down everything that your mind tells you. Don't type it down, write it down, because there's this connection between your dominant hand and your brain. So you write that all down. You then take a breath, stand up, change, go outside if you like, have a cup of coffee, change state totally. You then go again, and you imagine it's the time when you should have achieved the goal, and you say to yourself, I've achieved it. And you celebrate, and you get in that state. Say, yeah, fantastic, we did it, we did it. And whilst you're in that state, you ask yourself this question: because I. So I achieved my goal because I... ... I did that. I didn't use the because I didn't know that bit then. I've added it since. I just used the away motivated bit of, here we are, away motivation towards motivation. I used the away motivation bit with my team and said to them, answer this question for me, if only I'd. Now, it's not if only we, the government, the weather, the competition, or anything else. It's nothing about anybody else. This is personal responsibility. If only I'd. I gave them half an hour to do it. They came back with their answers. I added it to mine. I created a plan for every single day from September through to the 31st of March, and we stuck to the plan. Every day we read the plan, stuck to those actions. And we soared through the numbers, and we got the second tranche of the money. So this is how you use it. Use it with your team. People do this individually. You can't do it as a group. They've got to take it away and do it. From today, you imagine the point where you should have achieved the goal and you haven't. You get in that emotional, damn it, we didn't do it state and ask that question, if only I'd, and write down everything. Then you change state and you go, imagine that you have done it, and you say to yourself, I did it because I. And you see if your mind wants to tell you anything else. I've got somewhere, I've sent it to Adam, there's a little process, a little template that you can use on that. And later on, when I just finish in a few months, you can check the attachments, because what I've done in the attachments for you, those two reports that I mentioned earlier, the time management one, the 7 big problems, 7 big time management problems, how to avoid them and squeeze more out every day. I've given you a copy of that, so A, you can use it, and also you can think about how you can create that type of thing for your clients. And also I've given you a copy of the 7 big mistakes one, the 7 big mistakes that business owners, business people as well as business owners, unfortunately make, costing them a fortune in lost turnover, lost profits, and what's even worse, lost personal cash, and how to avoid them. So I've given you a copy of those as well, and Adam will give you my details if you want to contact me for sure. So let me finish off with this then. This is going to be my final bit before Adam comes back in. There he is. Hey, can I hear you, Adam? I can actually, yeah.
Yes, yep.
Good. Okay, so I'm just going to finish off with this last thing then, okay? We've got plenty of time, haven't we? We've still got, what, 7 minutes?
Yes, we have, yep.
Okay, cool. I'm aware of it. So here are 6 seemingly simple questions that you can use. You can use these to coach your sales team. You can use them with your own goal setting. You could use them to write an email. You could use them to write a website. You could use them to write a piece of direct mail. You could use it in a conversation with a client. I'll say the questions quickly first, and then I'll go through them briefly for you, as we haven't got a lot of time left today. Here are the questions. I'll say them to pace. You can write them down. Where am I now? Question mark. Remember, always put the question mark on, because that's the enter key on your neck top computer. I wish I could remember who told me that expression. I thought it was genius. It's the enter key on your neck top computer. So question 1, where am I now? Question 2, how did I get here? Question 2, how did I get here? Question 3, where am I going? Question 3, where am I going? Question 4, really important. Why do I want to go there? And when we answer the why question, remember, we've got to answer it with the 2 motivations. We're going to answer it why I want to go there because of what I don't want to happen, and why do I want to go there because of what I do want to happen. So we're going to use a way out towards motivation. So question 4, why do I want to go there? Question 5, what are the obstacles? Because within the obstacles are usually the solutions once you identify them. And question 6, so what shall I do? Question 6, what shall I do? So just run through them for you again. Where am I now? Or where are we now? Or if you're coaching somebody, where are you now? Or if you're with a client, where are you now? With a client, how did you get here? With a team member, how did you get here? What happened? brought that about then? Question 3, where are you going? You know, what's the outcome that you're looking for? What's the goal you're trying to achieve? Question 4, why do you want that? What is it about that that means you think you want that? Or you feel that you want that? Or believe that you want that? Or feel that matches with who you are? Back to identity. Question 5, what are the potential obstacles? And question 6, what are we going to do? Now, if you were talking to a client, you would position yourself using those 6 questions as the person who will take them from where they are to where they want to be for the reasons they've stated, past the obstacles they've identified, albeit you know better because you're the expert, to the goal they said they wanted to, showing them clearly what they need to do to get it. If you're talking to your team member, you do the same thing because you would be their coach. You would be taking it from the expert positioning. So there's 6 simple questions. Where am I now? How did I get here? Where am I going? Why do I want to go there? What are the obstacles and what the heck am I going to do? And that all links into people will never consistently do who they aren't. And if you want long-term change, it has to be addressed at the identity level. My name's Peter Thompson. It's been a pleasure sharing these ideas. It's been a pleasure to be with you. It's been a pleasure to do more stuff with you in the future if you feel that's appropriate. Adam, back to you.
Thank you very much, Peter. Thank you very much for taking your time to deliver this webinar today and for coming in last minute. I hope to have you back at some point, and including Stefan, so I've done a shout out for Stefan as well. Our next webinar is on the 20th of February. Which is 2 Tuesdays from now. It's going to be delivered by Tim Robertson, who is also an ISM fellow. But please ensure to register to that. And also please take advantage of all the attachments during this webinar. There's a couple from Pete and there's a couple from us at the ISM. I hope to see you all again soon on the next one. And again, thank you, Peter, and goodbye from me.
Delighted, Adam. Thanks for having me.
Goodbye, everyone. Thank you.
Goodbye.